From CNBC, Frank founder criminally charged with fraud over 175 million JP Morgan deal, published on April 4th. The Department of Justice charged Charlie Javice, founder of college financial planning platform Frank, with defrauding JP Morgan Chase of $175 million. Javice, 31, is accused of falsely and dramatically inflating the number of customers Frank actually had in a scheme to fraudulently induce JP Morgan to acquire the startup. The SEC has also sued Javice in connection with the alleged scheme. So now the case of Frank has gone from just JP Morgan suing Charlie to the Department of Justice and the SEC getting in on it as well. So the question remains, is Frank the next Theranos? Is Frank the next FTX? Is Charlie the next Sam Bankman-Fried or Elizabeth Holmes? Well, let's get into some of the details. So the first question to ask here is, well, what is Frank exactly? Well, their current website obviously is defunct, but if we use the Wayback Machine to go back and take a look at their website, here is some of their testimony pages on why students love Frank. Read the first testimonial. It reads, "I couldn't believe something like FAFSA could be done in such a short time. Boy, was I wrong. It's quick, easy, and helped me to get into my college of choice, as well as pick a lot of other opportunities based on my choices." Well, it's been a number of years since I had to fill out the FAFSA, but if it hasn't changed much since my time, I do remember it being a behemoth of a website platform. It was a nightmare to navigate and hard to complete properly. So any platform that does help expedite the process is a welcome one for probably most students across the board. However, the problem comes in with the allegations that were presented that Charlie had inflated the customer numbers here to overvalue her company when she was selling it to JP Morgan. So, what are the merits of that case? If you scroll down here on the CNBC article, the charges from the Department of Justice and the SEC, they come months after JP Morgan filed a lawsuit against Javice, alleging that she duped the bank into believing Frank had more than 4 million customers. In reality, the startup had fewer than 300,000, JP Morgan said in a suit. Scrolling down, Javice used a data science professor to invent millions of fake accounts after JP Morgan pressed for confirmation of Frank's customer base, the bank alleged. The suit included emails between the professor and Javice, including when the entrepreneur asked, "Will the fake emails look real with an eye check, or better to use unique ID?" So it does seem like JP Morgan does have some receipts when it comes to Javice trying to fake data. JP Morgan only discovered the discrepancy when 70% of emails sent to a batch of 400,000 Frank customers bounced back, according to the bank. So, for folks that are confused as to why this might trigger, there is an insider article that goes into a little bit more details here. So down here from Insider, JP Morgan acquired Frank in 2021 for 175 million, but began to question the authenticity of the startup's purported 4 million users after an email marketing campaign ended in, quote, disaster, according to the bank's lawsuit and filing by prosecutors. Out of 400,000 emails sent to Frank users, more than 70% bounced back, and only 103 were opened, the bank claimed. So to give a little bit of context here, obviously in any email campaign, there will be some number of bounce backs. Some email accounts will close, some people put in fake email accounts, but 70% means that of the 400,000, 70% had emails, which is unheard of for a normal client base. Furthermore, only 103 were open. So in a normal email campaign, we're looking at about 3% to 5% of emails being open. So for a normal customer base of 400,000, you send those out, you would expect in the thousands that were opened. The fact that only 103 were open, a factor of 10 less, means that there were some major issues going on with the client list. So obviously this triggered an investigation that led them to believing that, hey, there might be a lot more fake accounts here than expected. This is an also interesting claim here. The suit is also alleging that Frank had claimed that it had received an average of 28,000 in financial aid per user, which is about twice the average amount awarded to college students. Sorry, not in the case, according to Insider. So it looks like Frank had a number of claims on their website that were a little bit exaggerated, perhaps to juice up the selling amount. So, what is Frank and Charlie's response? Well, if we take a look at her court filing here in her counterfile, paragraph 8, her lawyers allege that JPMC now says that despite its extensive diligence and professional bona fides, it failed to uncover a key misrepresentation that Ms. Javice told its executives about Frank during diligence, and that it only later discovered that Frank only had about 300,000 registered account holders, rather than 4.25 million users that Ms. Javice had represented. But this is simply implausible, given the public information and market comparables available to JPMC and the detailed information it obtained during diligence. So what it's saying is, yes, her website back then claims 5.25 million users as of January 21st, 2022, according to the Wayback Machine, but that this was mere marketing and that JP Morgan should have known better than to trust this number because, Frank alleges, that they have sent over proper documentation upon the acquisition. So, who is correct here? Well, obviously, we will have to wait for the full court hearings and proceedings to continue. We do have innocent until proven guilty in this country, after all. However, no party really comes out from this looking very clean. Number one, if indeed JP Morgan's filings of email trails between Javice and the professor are accurate, it does look like Javice had intentionally tried to create fake accounts to juice up her numbers for the sale, which may account in a fraudulent charge. On the other hand, one must question why JP Morgan did not do any real diligence here when testing for the veracity of her claims. Before JP Morgan purchased Frank, one would imagine that they did some sort of check on her accounts. So, in any kind of startup, when you have a large number of clients, you will have some databases and you'll have data showing how many of those users actually completed certain steps. We have an acquisition funnel where not everyone, obviously, who opens an account actually completes the process or becomes a paying user. So, if they have a robust funnel that they present to JP Morgan before the acquisition, they can go in and sample each pool of clients. Let's sample the pool of folks who just signed up. Let's sample the pool of people who started a FAFSA application but never finished. Let's sample the pool of those who claim they had finished FAFSA and have received financial aid. And if they start sampling from those before they finalize the deal, they probably would have run into these issues before having to launch that email campaign that triggered this further investigation. In a moment with the banking sector being scrutinized and under fire for lacking trust from the regular bankers, right? Part of the bank runs are caused by a lack of trust in the banking system. This does not bode well. JP Morgan, as one of the largest banks in America, hopefully should have done their due diligence before purchasing. And one of the comments from the New York Times was very interesting. It did say that JP Morgan, in order to uphold its fiduciary duties to its own investors, should have done this due diligence. Why are they not being blamed? Which is a great question to ask. Well, hopefully this was interesting, and as always, for all your dividend investing needs, check out Div Income, available on iOS and Android.